If you're thinking about it,
we're talking about it.
It's all about me. That was a joke.
On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV.
Tonight on Piers Morgan Uncensored, he's one of the smartest and richest men in music history. Kiss legend Gene Simmons gives me his lessons from an extraordinary life. We'll talk money, power, showbiz, scandal, politics, and love. He's had it all. Strap in, it's going to be a crazy uncensored night.
From the News Building in London, this is Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Well, good evening. Welcome to a special edition of Piers Morgan Uncensored. Last time my guest was here, a few weeks ago, I left wanting a lot more. I thought, why aren't we doing a whole hour with this guy? So I asked him. He couldn't understand why we weren't either. So he's agreed, and he's back for the whole hour tonight. A true living legend of rock, one-on-one. Gene Simmons is rock and roll royalty. Kiss have more gold-certified records than any other band on the planet, selling 75 million records in half a century of touring and tumult. From rags to riches, Gene has turned his beats into a business empire. He's got the longest tongue in rock and one of the sharpest tongues in politics. They call him Dr. Love, the Demon, the God of Thunder. He's quite possibly the world's smartest ever rock star. And tonight, Gene Simmons is uncensored. Well, Gene Simmons joins me, and I said, Gene, I've actually got a stinking cold. And so my first question was going to be, when you're a singer, what do you do when you get a stinking cold and you're on tour?
I never claimed to be a singer. What we do is you just pile through it. The kind of music we do is certainly not operatic, and we don't pretend to be on X Factor or any of that stuff.
Have you ever lost your voice?
No, not in the way people think of it. It's because you just kind of plow through it. It's more, sort of gut kind of thing. And I say, Jagger does the smart thing as well. You write songs in your vocal range without very many high notes or very low, so you can do it even if your voice is gone.
Have you ever had to cancel a show for sickness? You?
Kiss?
No, you. Have you ever been responsible for a show?
No. No.
In your entire career?
No, never. And that's because, look, this is a blessing. I don't want to get too cornball about it, but by the way, I look pretty good.
You do.
The idea that God or whomever is in charge would give me a chance to lead this kind of life is just unbelievable. You know, we're approaching 50 years this year, and this journey has been just beyond anything. So the least you could do is show up on time, love and respect the fans, and understand that what you do isn't necessary. Food, shelter, those are necessary things. But the people that stick their tongue out and act like, the court jester, that's not necessary for life as we know it on the planet.
Let me take you back 50 years to your first show in the UK, which received the following review from a gentleman called Tony Wilson, who went on to be, of course, a Factory Records legend. But this is what he said about your first show when you first popped up, you guys.
In heavy metal, perhaps it should be illegal, is not all one way. If we gave the states the idea of music as physical assault, then they just repaid the compliment with such bands as Kiss, who have the same effect as using Brillo pads to get rid of acne. And you're also playing heavy post-rock metal music. You're evil, right? Yeah. You project evil. The question is, is there any evil in you?
Well, we're not doing the show yet. I don't want to...
Once we do the show, Did you play football at school?
What do you feel looking at that?
If that was a new band, I'd be interested. Gee, they look like they're having a lot of fun.
Exciting, different?
Exciting, different. And that was the idea, because we were such big Anglophiles American music to us was just boring. I mean, I know America created blues and rock and eventually rap and all that, but what the English did, this little island, I know it comprises Wales and all the other wonderful countries, but this little island gave the world the music that stands the test of time, the Beatles and the Kiss. And we wanted to form a band, sort of like the Beatles on steroids, where everybody in the band sang, everybody was a star. Now, of course, we couldn't shine the Beatles' shoes. I'm not saying we're anywhere near in that league, nor would we pretend to be. But the idea, the template was that, as opposed to the Stones, where there's one guy in the front and the guys are in the back. And what an amazing life. I still can't believe it.
Let me take you back to the very start of this amazing life, because that in itself is truly extraordinary, and I think was the pivot, really, for everything that followed. And that's your mother, who was this remarkable woman who, at the age of 14, in World War II, we've got a picture of you with her there, I think you're about 8 years old. When she was 14, she was taken into concentration camps, 3 in the end, in World War II, by the Nazis. Somehow survived, and we'll come to that. And then left at 19, having lost the most formative years of her life in this appalling Holocaust. How much of an impact did that have, not just on her, but on you?
Well, look, I was born in Israel, and I didn't know anything about history or life or anything. It's just that I knew that my mother was there. Our father, my father, see, even our father, I didn't want to personalize it. My father left us when I was about 6 or 7 years of age. And unfortunately, it's fairly common. Fathers just pick up and leave, shameful as it is. And all I had was my mother, and I was the only child, and she was my rock. She was the foundation, my moral compass. But I didn't know anything about my mother. She wouldn't talk about her formative years, Hungary, where she and my father were born, and never talked about the concentration camps. And as I got older, I tried to engage. Mom, I'm now a 6th grade teacher in Spanish Harlem, and I know a little bit about the history. Can you tell me? She wouldn't do it. It was just too horrific. And
you later discovered a lot of stuff about what she'd been through from the archives. What did you find out about her time in the concentration camp?
My mother, at 13, 14, had gone to Frisur, which is a school to learn how to do makeup and hair and stuff like that. And the way my mother survived, almost to the T, is what Sophie's Choice, that Meryl Streep movie, is. The commandant's wife in the concentration camp at Mauthausen, I found out, she wanted somebody who knew how to do makeup and hair and stuff like that. So she brought some Jews in, Jewish girls, any one of you. And they had a row of young Jewish women. And können Sie sprechen Deutsch? I can speak a little German. I made sure I learned how to speak that language. Können Sie sprechen Deutsch? Du? Sie? And a few of the girls said, ich kann sprechen ein bisschen Deutsch. And they threw them out. God knows what happened to them. My mother, who could get by in German, actually didn't raise her hands because she understood, the less I know, I'm going to keep quiet. And because my mother, they thought, couldn't speak German, she was allowed to stay there and do the hair for the commandant's wife and so on, and would sneak, a piece of bread or some old chicken in the garbage pail, and that's how she survived. Astonishingly. And she told me, when I finally confronted her about that, she told me she didn't dare mention this to anybody when she got back to the barracks because she would be killed. Right. She would be killed for the morsels of food, as hard it is to believe.
And she lost a large number of her family.
I have no grandparents. I didn't know anybody, her brother, everybody. And before, she later admitted, my mother lived to be 94 years of age. And always told me every day above ground is a good day, in Hungarian. And I take that with me wherever I go, blessed. And her mother, my grandmother, who I've never met, was being led off to the gas chambers with her mother. They took the oldest first, and my mother's mother would not let her mother go to the gas chamber by herself. She willingly walked with her and in essence, turned to my mother in Hungarian and said, live, survive. And my name in in Hebrew is chaim, which means life.
Wow.
Live, you know, it's the greatest gift there is, and that's, you know, despite everything, despite the hardships, my mother's point of view about life and everything was enjoy the little things, this glass of water, and thank you for this, by the way, I'll take a little bit. The water, the thing, you don't know what you've got until and if it's gone. Every day above ground is a good day. You better tattoo that on your soul right now.
She also never, and I've interviewed a lot of Holocaust survivors, she, like them, never had a trace of self-pity.
No.
Never played the victim.
No, never tugged on anybody's shirt sleeves. Do you know what a horrible life I've had? No, she refused to speak about it. Steven Spielberg, who we've met a few times, reached out for the Shoah Foundation. He wanted to interview the survivors of the concentration camps and wanted my mother to record her experiences, and she refused.
Really?
It was too, what she saw was beyond anything. And of course there are deniers out there, unfortunately, but it's a lesson for all of us. And for those of you that keep thinking that this is just the Jewish experience, very few people understand that millions of gypsies, Christians, undesirables, the homosexual community, millions were slaughtered there just because they were unwanted.
You have a very low tolerance of some of the modern societal traits, entitlement, victimhood, you know, all this kind of stuff. Is that driven by what happened with your mother?
Of course. If you don't have a sense of history and where you came from and stuff, you take everything for granted. This entitlement thing is a disease of modern pop culture, wokeism and so on. Our kids, Nick and Sophie, are the most wonderful human beings I know of. They're much better than Shannon and I. Shannon's right outside. More ethical, more moral, polite, and all this kind of stuff. I can tend to push the button sometimes like you can, but for effect, because we get off on it. But they never received a penny of an allowance. This idea of giving your kids money for not doing anything is insane. So they've never done that. In fact, Shannon drove the kids every day to school without fail, whether she was sick or not, for years. And she volunteered to do the lunch thing so that she can keep an eye on her two children. And Nick, our son, got an award, the only one they've ever given, for perfect attendance for the first 5 years of going to school, which, oh, here I am talking about kids on the Piers Morgan show. I'm sorry.
You're allowed to. I've got 4 kids. I'm as proud of them as you are of yours.
You know of, but go ahead.
Let's take a short break. When I come back, I want to talk to you about the moment you moved to America, you and your mum. And that starts the next phase of both your lives. And it's an extraordinary phase. We'll talk about that in a moment. Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. We're dedicating the show tonight to rock legend and Kiss frontman Gene Simmons. So, Gene, you're 8 years old. Your father's walked out on you and your mother, this remarkable woman, and she decides you're going to try your luck, the two of you, in America, the land of the free. What are your first memories of when you got to America?
I remember a little before we came to America, my mother had two brothers who were able to escape to America. My mother was in Hungary at the time that she was put into the camps. And I didn't know where we were going. I didn't know what was going on. And so my mother took me to this thing, and we stood in the back of the line. And I didn't know it then, but there was a man sitting on a higher ledge with a desk, and people were lined up. And my mother, in her younger years, was just a very, very beautiful woman. And the man sitting there with what I later learned was the American flag is, pointing to my mother in the back of the line and says something in a language I never heard of before. And we get to the front of the line, and he tries to communicate with her. And he bends over and he's looking down, and he says, do you speak? I didn't know what he was saying. He was saying it in English. Do you speak English? And he didn't speak Hebrew. And he fumbled, and kunnen Sie sprechen een bisschen Deutsch? Can you speak a little German? She says, jawohl, ich kann sprechen, So they start talking a little bit in German because he didn't speak Hebrew. And what I later learned was, okay, we've got your thing. You're going to America. You're going to become a citizen a few years down the line if you behave and so on. All I need you to do is to swear allegiance and raise your hand. This, sorry, I get choked up when I think about this, but my mother didn't know what the guy meant, so she did the only thing that she saw. She started to do this, and I didn't know what was going on, and my mother was, kind of tearing up, and the man quickly got off, the pedestal, came over to her, and I'll never forget this, and God bless him. He put his right hand above her left hand, pushed it down, and later my mother told me, he told her, you'll never have to do that ever again.
Wow.
And and we came to America, and I never saw or dreamed anything like that. The people were big, and everybody had cars, and it's just, and because we came from dirt roads, it was a new country, and there wasn't even an infrastructure. And we visited my Aunt Magda, and she had a refrigerator. And she opened the refrigerator. It was full of food. We didn't have that. You had a piece of paper, like the English fish and chips, where you stick it in a piece of newspaper and stuff, and you got your allotment for the week. And I remember looking at a jar of jam, and in Hungarian, I speak Hungarian as well, and asking my Aunt Magda in Hungarian, she too had been in the camps, what is this? She goes, she gave me a spoon and opened the thing. And she thought I was going to get a taste. And as soon as I tasted it, I started eating it because I'd never tasted anything like that. And both my mother and my aunt were laughing their heads off. I never saw television. I never saw people flying through the air with capes. I never saw anything. I'm still marvel at this amazing country. Yes, it has its blisters, its racism, its all kinds of bad things with it. But I think clearly the UK and so on started with Guy Fawkes before he tried to blow up everything. And I know, but the history of democracy is the only hope we have on this planet.
And you're a perfect example, you and your mother, of America taking in pretty much anyone and giving them the chance of a different, better life, which has always been at its core what the United States of America is about.
Ideally, it's a lot messier than that. I do think that there is, and this always gets me into hot trouble, even though I'm a big proponent of giving people a chance, the world is a very sad place. There's a lot of things. But you've got to have some kind of order, otherwise it's chaos, because the good it comes in along with the bad. So I believe in legal immigration. Just slow down a little bit. Let people at least know your names, where you are, social security number, and so on, so you can keep track of what's going on. That goes for all the countries that take in, sad stories about immigrants. Legal immigration is the right way to do it.
Several things happen to you. one, you get bullied as a kid when you get to America, and eventually you fight back. Tell me about that moment.
I'd never been in a fight in Israel. I was sort of bigger than everybody, but I'd never been in a fight. I didn't pick on anybody, live and let live thing. And I remember somebody was starting to pick on me, and I don't remember what happened, but it was a snap. It was this kind of Jekyll and Hyde thing that happened right along. And I didn't know about headbutting or anything, but I just hurled my body at this guy who was 2 or 3 years older than I am. And as it happened, my forehead hit his face, and he went down like an oak tree. And I didn't know what happened. It hurt me. I was just holding my head up. And I thought I was going to be in trouble with my mother. And when I told her about it, she was proud, because for the longest time, our people have been, assimilationist, and you just kind of don't cause troubles, don't fight back. It didn't work out well in World War II.
You hate bullies, don't you? Because of all
I won't stand for it. By the way, verbal bullies as well. If you pick on people, I'm at the front line trying to stop that, because there but for the grace of God, if you allow a group of people or somebody to be bullied, you're next, pal.
Yeah.
Everybody is part of a segment of life and or religion or culture and so on that can be picked on and is picked on. So I won't stand for it.
So you have this moment, you fight back, you feel good about yourself for doing that, your mother feels good about you. Then you see, a little later, you see the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and a light bulb goes off again, and you're thinking, not that you want to be exactly like them, because they're a unique...
I wish.
But you wanted that.
I must have been 13 or 14 years of age, maybe 13, and 1964. And I'd always worked after school, and it was even on Sundays. And it was Sunday in New York, and there was the Ed Sullivan Show, where half the population of the entire country in America, at that time was 150 million population, now it's 330-something million. 75 million people watch that show.
Yeah.
And the Beatles come on. Well, you think you've lost your love? All this sound that I never heard before. And I was mesmerized, and I thought to myself, gee, they look silly, and what's this? And they're smaller and slight, and they looked, a little feminine to, guys, because we're used to, bigger guys. And my mother comes in and basically verbalizes the same thing. Oh, look how silly they look. And at that moment, I thought, oh, they're cool. That's when I started paying attention. The girls were screaming, and these guys were having a good time. And I said, gee, that's a good job. Wish I could do that. And when I first tried to do that, I couldn't do that. But I will tell you, time to admit it, for a few years, I was 13 until I was about 15 years of age, I talk like that. I did.
Well, if I did actually.
I tried to convince everybody, oh, I'm not from here. He goes, no, do you know the Beatles? Well, of course. Yeah, it's a bit of all right, you know what I mean?
Did you ever meet the Beatles?
Ringo, he sent me a birthday greeting. And Paul, my partner, obviously has met Sir Paul. Just the most lovely people of all time. You want to see somebody with grace, class, after Beatlemania and stuff. You sit, talk with Ringo or Paul, and you see that's the way you do it. That should be the mark of how to be gracious.
I completely agree.
Oh,
I think he's an absolute god in that sense. You formed KISS. I'm not going to go over the whole KISS story again, except to say that there's a moment when it all kicks off and you become this huge band, and you're living the dream that you had when you watched the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. And you go to your mother and you have a check for $1 million.
It wasn't $1 million.
How much was it? Say it.
8.
8 million. $8 million. And you show her that check.
Yeah.
And how does she respond?
She didn't understand it. My mother never went to proper school or anything. And in Hungarian, she just saw the zeros and stuff. And she literally didn't understand. In fact, she used to ask me all the time, who pays you? When do you go to work? Where do you go to work? Because she understood you go to work at a certain time, somebody pays you. I said, the people pay me. Anyway, when I showed her the check, I wasn't giving to her. I said, look, Mom, look at this money. She didn't understand. Wonderful, wonderful. Now what are you going to do? Literally.
Because she was worried that you may just stop working, or?
Well, I don't know. It was always, yesterday didn't matter.
Yes.
And that's a profound point of view about life, which is there's nothing you can do about yesterday. My mother, bless her, was in a concentration camp and yet never referenced that in her dealings with people today.
Which is incredible.
Because something you can do about today, and if you can fix today, you can make tomorrow better. And my mother was the funniest person I ever met. How is the orchestra? That's how she called
the band.
Yeah.
Let's take another break. When I come back, I want to talk about Kiss, not just the band, but the brand, because almost uniquely, you turned Kiss into this money-making machine globally as a brand, as much as a band, as we see there with your phone cover. So back with Gene Simmons after the break.
This is Talk TV.
Well, welcome back to my special with Gene Simmons from Kiss. So, Gene, if you could only perform live on stage again throughout your life, or have sex with all the women you had sex with, but
Leave it
but you
to-
couldn't do both, Which one would you go for? The women or the live performing?
Well, I'm married now,
Obviously.
Piers,
Obviously.
and my lovely wife is right outside.
I know, and I'm going to ask her the same question.
Oh, my God. Well, look, doing what I do, wearing more makeup and higher heels than any female you ever met, literally, has been just unbelievable. But sex is pretty good, too.
So which one?
Why do you have to pick?
Well, you've got to choose. It's a binary question.
On stage.
I knew you'd say that.
Because you also get paid. Bam!
Well, you certainly get paid. So from 76 to 79, Kiss become the biggest band in the world. You still hold the record for most gold albums by any band. You sold over 100 million records worldwide. You've toured the world dozens of times. And now it's coming to an end, the touring. How do you feel about that? How do you really feel about that?
I really feel proud. The best part was when I ran into my buddy Paul Stanley, who we continued to have this astonishing relationship. And I've always been so sad when Lennon McCartney and Jagger and Richards started, backbiting. I mean, even Cain and Abel didn't get along so well. It was always so sad to me. But Paul and I have this resilient, sort of the brother I never had kind of a thing. And we don't agree on very much at all. But there's an abiding admiration and respect for the talent that he has that I will never have, and hopefully the piece of the puzzle that I bring to it that he doesn't have.
Yeah, no question.
So that 1 and 1
You have an amazing chemistry.
It works. 1 and 1 is 3. You don't know everything. I don't. And when you meet somebody that's a sort of kindred spirit, you can run and be bigger than you ever were. And at any rate, to cut to the chase, all good things have to come to an end, and you have to have the self-respect and pride, that's a big word, and the love of the fans to know when the hell it's time to get off that stage.
Do you see a lot of bands who just who go on too long?
Look at that. That wasn't so long ago. Don't remember where that was.
This is in your farewell tour, yeah?
Yes, it is, but all the shows are like that. Just insane.
But do you see other bands go on too long?
They go too long.
Yeah.
And it's tough to give it up, this kind of admiration, this godlike.
I would love this.
And but at any rate, when you still look good, when you still have the physicality it takes to do that, get off the stage. By the way, it goes for boxers too. Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, who's a friend, and so on. These are the greats of all time. And you've got to know when it's time to get out.
You don't know when to leave the party, right? I think Sinatra said that.
You must, yeah.
So I got an insight into your marketing genius when we both appeared on Celebrity Apprentice back in 2008 with Donald Trump, obviously, was the host. But what I remember most was my first insight into you as a businessman was we were told to do a hot dog challenge. We literally had to sell hot dogs from a stand in Midtown Manhattan. Actually, outside the Fox.
Now, just a second. Trump did not mention a stand. All he said was sell hot dogs.
That's true. That's true. Which is why I'm going to come to your bit of genius. So we were deliberating as a group whether to charge $10 or $100 for our dogs. You picked your phone up and called a mate and said, "Will you give me $5,000 for a hot dog?"
10.
Was it 10? And he said, "Okay." And then you said to me, I'll never forget this. You said, "It's not the vacuum cleaner that gets sold. It's the way the salesman sells the cleaner." And I've remembered that ever since.
Yeah, it's true.
Because that's really the essence of where marketing takes a business and explodes it, right?
Well, if you can assess, and everything is about an assessment, where you go, what road to take, and so on. If you understand that it's not how many units you sell, but how much money you make, then it isn't always about units sold. It's about, I'd rather sell one Rolls Royce than 20 Volkswagens, right? So it's not how many units, it's how much money can I make. And the rules were very clear. I was listening. Sell hot dogs, didn't say where or when or all that stuff. And you can't call people you're in business with. So I just called people I knew and I said, "This is for charity. I'm not going to get any of the money. Give me $10,000. I made a few of those calls. In the very first phone call, we beat the female team.
We did.
Because it was
with one
males.
call, with one dog. Because actually you understood how to play the game, which was brilliant.
Hold on. But who won?
Well, I won, obviously. But you know how I won? Because I watched what you did, I listened to what you said, and I thought, yes. And I then hit my Rolodex, and I then got a lot of other people who came to help me in the same way, particularly in the final, actually. It was very interesting. But you also took this, obviously, and had done before then, to the rock business in a way I don't think anyone's ever done as well as you guys did with this.
Well, we make a living.
Rob, you made an incredible franchise out of Kiss where you have, I think, over 5,000 lines of merchandise.
I just want to stop you for a second because self-aggrandizement and other big words like gymnasium, I enjoy hearing nice things said about me, but it's never just about you. Paul's my partner.
No,
I've been
sure.
there from the beginning. You have to surround yourself with the right people who understand it so you can go forth together. But thank you for the kind words.
5,000 different pieces of merchandise.
Should I do the joke? We literally, no joke intended, we literally have everything from Kiss condoms to Kiss caskets. We'll get you coming and we'll get you going.
There is a Kiss toilet seat.
Oh, yeah.
We've got it here.
You know the phrase, sit on
Does
my
that
face?
sell well?
Sit on my face. It says so right there. Of course, these are semantics, but I'm not...
We've got a Kiss lunchbox.
Oh, sure. There are many generations, of course.
Yeah. I
We
mean,
even
it's fantastic. But I think the point about it is you just understood how to sell the band, the business, you guys.
Well,
you just knew how to do it.
I'm not just in the band, I'm a fan of the band. And I remember when the Beatles first came out, there were a lot of Beatle things, Beatle this, Beatle that, but then they never made the money. They didn't understand, the marketplace and so on, because it was all brand new. But we wanted to be Disney without the overhead.
Right.
You can make an awful lot of money if you understand everything. By the way, I'm the only person on the planet that owns the pound sign. It's trademarked, recognized here. Yeah, I'll show it to you, including the euro. Because countries are smart, but not that smart. They create trademark laws, but never trademark. The word England, public domain. Why? Why haven't you ever trademarked that? So I do own all.
Well, you've also got one of these, which is a Kiss coffin.
Casket, yeah.
Have you ordered one of these for when the time comes? Or not?
No, I think I'll splatter, whatever it is, the dust particles and so on. But they also double, and the bars have them because they're moisture proof. So you put ice in it and people reach in and have cold drinks out of it. True.
How much money have you made from Kiss?
Oh, come on. That's the first question I was going to ask you. Piers Morgan, how much money does it take?
John,
How much?
Give me a number that's going to horrify me.
No, that's not fair.
I've read that you're worth $400 million.
Really?
Yeah.
No,
True?
You're very kind. Oh,
Up or down?
Up or down what?
From 400.
I always want to go up. But I tell you what, here's a point for all you folks out there. I'm kind of a big deal. You go to your cell phone and you type into Google and Schmoogle, Gene Simmons gum. Mm-hmm. When I was singing the national anthem here for the NFL football team, I was chewing gum the day before and doing Soccer AM, the promotion thing, and I was chewing gum and they said, Mr. Simmons, please take out your gum. And because I'm a wise guy, I said, eBay. The next day they put it on eBay. How much, Piers Morgan?
How much has it gone for?
I asked you first.
Let me guess, £5,000.
Would you like a tip? If I went to the Empire State Building and pointed up, how much would that number be?
How much was it gone?
$247,000.
Or for a piece of gum? Chewed by you.
Gene Simmons gum. That's true. And you can Google and schmoogle it.
Talking of Google, what do you make of the tech world we're now in? What do you make of Elon Musk and artificial intelligence and all these things?
I'm a big fan. And like all people, they're the ones that change history and make life better on Earth. But they're the single people, the forward thinkers, the futurists, change life as we know it. Elon Musk is undeniable. He tried for years to get car companies to go away from diesel fuel and, gas and so on. They wouldn't listen. So He did it himself. It's always the individual, not the corporate entity, because you can move. You can move fast. You don't have to make decisions by committee. I'm a big fan. And Twitter's going to be fine.
I totally agree with you. Are you excited or are you worried about artificial intelligence, particularly about the music business?
I am concerned, music business aside, I am concerned about the lack of legislation. When you enter a new, let's say a new planet, you're about to land on well, clearly there's opportunity there. There are minerals and things, and so, all kinds of opportunities. Without rules of the game, it's like playing sports without rules. Who's going to do what? You need some rules that are, kind and beneficial to mankind, womankind, transkind, all kinds of kinds. Okay, does that cover everybody?
Yeah.
And so
Probably not.
Probably not. Well, there are always going to be new ones, and you have to respect all that. Subject aside, the problem with AI is not, AI is here whether you like it or not. So let's look at it smartly and let's pass legislation. AI creates a song using my voice or what sounds like my voice with a new song, and it sounds just like me, and it definitely sounds like that kind of a thing. So when you're buying it, who owns the copyright and the publishing if AI did that? So is it me because it sounds like me? You could swear it was me. So these are uncharted.
And if it is you, do you then care if AI does that?
We can make a deal.
I love that. Of course, of course. We're talking of making a deal. Let's come back after the break with the best deal I think you've made in your life, which is persuading your wife, Shannon, not just to marry you, but to stay with you. That's after the break. Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. We've been joined now by my special guest wife, Shannon. Well, Shannon, the boss, finally, we have you.
Boss Tweed.
We have you right where I want Gene to be. Let me ask you, straight off the top.
Yeah.
He, when you met him, was one of the biggest rock stars in the world.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but yes.
Would it have mattered if he was a plumber?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I
wouldn't have dated him.
I asked her, Shannon, if I didn't make a good living, and I'm going to try not to exaggerate, if I didn't make a good living, would you be with me? And she said,
No.
see ya!
But you must have known when you met him, I guess, his reputation.
I did not. But
Did you
by the
not?
way, no, I.
Where did you meet?
I grew up listening at the Playboy Mansion.
Really?
It was a party. He came in with two, I don't know, girls. And someone suggested, a producer friend of mine, that I go over and meet him. My sister was like, come on, let's go meet him. And I said, I don't know who that is. He looks kind of a little smarmy to me. And so I went over to meet him, and, we got to talking, and we had a lot in common, actually. But the next day, since there's no cell phones or internet and so on, we ran down to Tower Records to look him up to make sure it was real, because I didn't believe a word he said. And,
You saw an entire section.
Yeah.
It was Kiss This and Kiss.
Yeah.
When you realised he
But
was
I'd never
really...
listened to that music before. I was Motown girl.
She just loves Tom
Yeah,
Jones.
yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
What was it that made you fall in love with him?
It's smart. And
That's it.
smart and rich. No, I'm kidding. Smart. And he's very romantic, actually. And did you make him cry yet? He cries.
Yeah, he did get,
I like that.
emotional, yeah.
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 I like that.
I was surprised. Yeah.
Is a really bad boyfriend, but very good husband.
Well, that's interesting. It almost is like your relationship is two halves.
Yeah.
Up to when?
It took 28 years for him to grow up.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I waited.
Oh, my God.
Why did you wait? Many would have gone.
I know. And a lot of people, like, once your husband cheats on you once, they ditch. And
What about when it's 5,000 times?
There's more. Well, there's more to him than that.
Yeah.
There's.
And he's admitted this. He said that
I
there's
know.
two
Yeah.
Gene Simmons.
Believe me, I've heard it. Huh?
Yeah. And do you believe that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, it's hard when now that I have a young man as a child, I know that, when a girl comes to your door wearing a raincoat with nothing under it, you don't just go, bye-bye. So I understand that it happened and meant almost nothing.
I've got a picture of you on your wedding day.
Ah.
Now, this took a long time, Gene, for you to persuade Shannon to get down the aisle. What do you both remember of that day?
I have to tell you that I never wanted to get married, and I never had kids. At least consciously, I didn't want to become my father. My father,
Right.
But he didn't know he was his father
as far as I
the whole
knew.
time.
Really? You think that?
Yes.
My father.
In what way, Shannon?
Because his father was a philanderer, and that's why his mother left him. And so, but he was a philanderer, and he came by it honestly. And but you can't. I mean, I don't know how can you blame a musician where the girls are just knocking on your door and they're naked when you open it up? You say, what do you say?
I didn't want to have kids because I didn't want kids feeling what I felt. The world ended. I felt like I felt guilty. What did I do wrong that made my father get up and leave without explaining anything? So
And yet.
Am I doing okay?
She's not letting you get away with a thing here.
No, you're not getting off the hook in this one.
But am I doing okay?
Well, let me ask you a different question,
You're doing
Gene.
okay
Gene,
now.
what would you say to your son, for example, or your daughter, if they ask you about these stories where you've given interviews and
we've
talked
had
about having thousands of groupies and so on?
we've had
What do you
that.
say to your kids if they ask those questions?
At some point, you got to grow up. I don't know what to say except that there's no. Look at that.
He said.
That's Nick.
He said it was fun, but it's over now.
Wow.
Do you believe it is, Shannon?
I didn't.
Definitely over now.
Oh yeah. I cut off my schmeckle and put it in
Or I will.
a formaldehyde, or she will put it in a formaldehyde thing. Put it on the
Pickle
fireplace.
jar.
In a pickle jar.
You see, I get what the thing is with you two. It's humour, right?
It is.
I mean, ultimately,
you
it's
really
humour.
Can't. I mean, I could probably wallow in sorrow for a long time, but I mean,
Has he
it is
broadly,
what
though,
it is.
made you happier than not?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
And when you say he's romantic, how does that
Yeah.
manifest itself? What's the
Well-
most romantic thing he's done for you?
Oh my gosh.
I gave you some cash yesterday.
Do you know what he really does? Just give me wads of cash.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is quite romantic, actually.
I told him, you know, did you sell any guitars today? He's, yes. And I go,
Yeah.
and the cash
And when
comes
she
in.
gets the watch, she goes like this.
Gene, what does true love mean to you?
Romantic, the part, though. He did do the flower petals.
Really?
Yeah.
So what does true love mean to you, Gene? Because obviously you found it with Shannon, but what does it mean to you?
Shamefully, I never confronted myself about that and barely said I love you to my mother.
Yeah.
Shockingly,
Really?
shamefully, I was always alone.
He,
You know?
he thought it was a weakness, I
Have you
think.
said it to Shannon?
Yes. Yes. It happened
Can you
much later.
shut
in
up
li-
now?
It happened much later. I was afraid of
Being weak.
being weak
Vulnerable.
and not I never opened myself up to that. You know, I always it's hard, you know, the knight in shining armor thing. At least you have protection around you. And I never wanted to be hurt ever again. Like, now she's about to say,
No.
what can I say? There's no school for life, and there's no school that says, okay, this is what marriage is, this is what a relationship
Listen,
is.
we were both learning as we went along.
What
I
have
was
you-
also young when I met him, too.
Right. What have you really learned about yourself, Gene? When you look back at your life.
I learned that I'm not so bad after all.
Shannon, would you agree?
I would, yeah, I would say it's not so bad after all.
Yeah, I really thought I was going to, if it was going to be, I'd been in only 2 other relationships of any kind. Never wanted a
Sort
relationship.
of. You weren't faithful to them either.
Well, one was Cher, famously,
And Diana.
and Diana Ross,
Yeah.
who you were with before
he
you
was
met
still
Shannon.
philandering at the same time.
He was?
Yeah, sure.
Right.
With me.
Shannon, I mean, you've got to admit, I mean, going Cher, Diana Ross,
Right.
you.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Well, that's not
Hey,
fair.
well, what, older women with children than me?
Oh, stop it.
That's fine.
Let me finish, Jim, but I want to show you again the picture of you and your mum when you're 8 years old. Because I think that she's obviously been this constant presence throughout everything in your life and really formed, I think, a lot of your life.
Yeah.
When you look at yourself there, what do you see in that little boy? What was he hoping to be, do you think?
Oh, just always being a big dreamer.
You
and-
wanted to make her proud.
Yes, anything I wanted to do was always about my mother and
You never drank or took drugs because of her?
I believe our children are the same way.
yes,
by the
no,
way.
oh, absolutely.
Wanting to make him.
And do you think you did make her proud? Did she tell you that?
Yes. She,
Of course.
my mother,
She had a shrine to him in her
had
house. It
shrines
said,
all over the
"Welcome
house."
home to my favorite son." It
she
was
al-
up year round.
but my favorite son, she only had one son. But
What was she proudest of, do you think, of all the things you achieved?
no drugs, no alcohol, no smoking, be straight. She didn't approve of the stupid stuff she kept telling me about. Don't do that to Shannon Khan. But I want to say that my mother was bizarrely my biggest fan. When we'd land in New York on the way to someplace else, my mother would be behind a pillar. I'm not exaggerating.
Watching you deplane.
Just waving.
Yes.
Chaim, that's my Hebrew name.
Yeah.
Chaim Kam, which is Hungarian, my Chaim, my life. She'd wave and go back behind the pillar just.
And she would stand on the
Just to see-
chairs at the concert.
She would be
Like
on the
this.
chairs on the concert.
Amazing.
And she would,
And do
go-
you feel, Gene,
Fantastic.
fundamentally, when you look back over everything you've achieved and had and everything, family, professional, do you feel an enormous sense of gratitude to your mother? Because without her, it's highly unlikely that journey would have happened.
nothing would have happened, and which is why mothers are the most important life form on the face of the planet. Without your mother, Piers, you wouldn't have become who you
I
became.
totally agree.
All our mothers, our fathers mean well and so on, but there's only one person who gave you life, and that's your mother, and that's forever. By the way, I did a paper in college about the end of life as we know it for bad guys who are on death row and so on. The one word that keeps coming up, or the phrase that keeps coming up, is apologies to their mother before they go to death.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Gene, it's been brilliant. I'm so glad we did a much bigger interview. Shannon, great to have you, adding some stardust at the end. Thank you both very much indeed for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Well, that's it from me. Whatever you're up to, I think just keep it like Gene Simmons. Keep it uncensored. Good night.
Good evening, I'm Piers Morgan, Uncensored, in New York City. Tonight on Piers Morgan Uncensored, in Kyiv, Ukraine. Tonight on Piers Morgan Uncensored, a special edition from Qatar. Tonight, a special edition of Piers Morgan Uncensored. Martina Navratilova.
He's making me cry again.
Do you believe you can win this war? So are you going to run again?
I think a lot of people are going to be very happy.
Yes, I feel betrayed.
They're trying to force you out.
Yes, not only the coach, but the other 2 or 3 guys there around.
All these people protesting just don't get it.
Many of them don't.
Isn't that slightly patronising?
I would call him out the window.
Do you think we should have psychiatric assessments?
Oh, I'd be there for weeks.
Could you keep quiet? I'm trying to read a book here.
Take spare and chuck it where it belongs, in the bin.
Where's Suggsy? All of that, where are they?
Where's their cheering?
Where's Brian May, for God's sake? Why isn't Brian May? Why isn't someone on the roof of the palace?
With the castle,
Where have they gone?
It's from that much cushier jail that Ghislaine Maxwell agreed to be interviewed for the very first time.
I obviously wish I'd never met him.
You're shaking your head. The British people are up in arms.
Boris Johnson is out as British Prime Minister.
The Conservative Party can certainly win the next election.
Can we?
Yes,
Labour
absolutely.
29 points ahead in the polls. Can we?
This is the royal tea.
Question is, did he say, yes, I have taken drugs, and they bent the rules to give him the visa, or lied on the visa application form and therefore got it?